Welcome, everybody. I'm honored today to have with us Stephen Svoboda, with Attorney for the Rights of the Child, who's been working in intactivism for decades now, trying to save children from the genital harm that is happening in American hospitals 3,000 times a day. Thank you, Stephen, for being here. How are you today?
Thank you, Dwayne. I'm good. I think a lot of us, since the point where you and I met in person for the first time, have been a little more optimistic lately.
Absolutely. We met in Atlanta in 2022, did we not?
That's true. And then we met again in Los Angeles in 2026.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems so long ago, but it's such a short amount of time, really. Well, we'll be respectful of your time, and our viewers' time, and I like to start with, what is your unique approach when you talk to someone who, for them, this is their first time talking about circumcision? They've never thought about it before. They don't know that it is genital mutilation, and how do you approach a first person for the first time?
It sounds so innocuous. It sounds so innocent.
Circumcision. What could be bad about circumcision? Possibly. I do try, and this is part of what I would say is our unique approach. Unique is an uncomfortable word because there's been so many people coming out of this movement in the more than 30 years that I've been involved, we've been involved, that I've sort of seen it all in a way, but I think we do have what I could characterize as somewhat unique, which is that, look, I don't view that there's any enemy in the work to protect children's genital autonomy, to make sure all children get the bodies they were born with, except in those almost non-existent cases where there's a medical need to cut them, and they get to make their own choices about how they live their lives. So that's our goal, whether you're a male child, a female child, an intersex child. All children deserve the right to an intact body. So when I approach someone for the first time, I remember how I was in 1990 when I first heard about this topic. And quite frankly, I thought it was weird. It's like, why are people worrying about this? There's so many more important things in this world. And my next thought was, I eventually decided that I was going to devote a lot of my life to working on this, and founded Attorneys for the Rights of the Child. And we've been working for a long time, putting out newsletters, going to the United Nations, debating an epidemiologist in Charleston, South Carolina. And I have to say, beating his pants off unofficially, but he had no response to any of our arguments. The doctors on either side of me turned to me in the middle of the debate and said, Stephen, we came in believing in circumcision. You've converted us to your position. And I was the only non-doctor there, all right? So it's funny, Dwayne, because I try to approach each person as an individual. Each one is talking to me for the first time, as you say. And it's good if I can have beginner's mind and talk to them with that same thing in mind. So I try to use words that we may not like as intactivists, but that people who aren't used to this topic understand, like circumcision, which does have the downside of making it sound like an innocuous medicalized procedure, but that's the word people know. Well, why is circumcision a bad thing, Stephen? I don't get it. I mean, so you and I know very well, Dwayne, it can cause physical problems, it can cause emotional problems, sexual problems, psychological problems. It can last a lifetime. And a lot of men I've worked with say it's the worst thing that ever happened to them. And the real tragedy to it is it's so needless. And even the greater tragedy is some children have even more catastrophic complications than an average genital mutilation case. And of course, there's deaths every year, as there is from any surgery. But the difference with these is it's completely unnecessary. We can console ourselves with other deaths from other procedures that the procedure needed to be done. And medicine is great these days, but regrettably, it's not perfect. But in this case, Dwayne, as you well know, my brother, we don't need to be doing this. And that's the real tragedy. So I do my best to talk to newcomers in a down-to-earth manner, and nobody's the enemy in my mind. Doctors aren't the enemy. The Jewish and Islamic lobbies that sometimes support genital mutilation aren't the enemy. It's convenient to have an enemy, and it's tempting, but I don't think it's true. And I think the real enemy is social inertia and this belief we've come up with that somehow we've been doing this all this time. There must be something good to it, or at least it can't be that bad, right? Doctors wouldn't be doing things that are bad. But doctors do things that are bad all the time. We know about all the terrible past stories, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment where they let African-American men get infected for 40 years. We know, and there's other recent stories. We know all those stories. Medicine does bad things sometimes. It's not bad generally, but it's bad more often than it should be. So we can't console ourselves with that thought. It's comforting, but it's not true.
I totally agree. It's actually what you mentioned, social inertia. It's cultural. It certainly isn't necessary to, obviously, since 70% of the human males on Earth do have a foreskin until the time of their demise, but yet somehow the American male is the only one that needs it amputated immediately.
And you know what's odd, Dwayne, is all these men in Europe that aren't cut. We know for a fact, because we believe what Americans tell us about genital mutilation, we know for a fact they're dropping dead in the street from not being cut, but somehow the Danish TVs and the British TVs, we know how many TVs are on London, cameras are all over London. Somehow they're missing these events. They're all happening off camera through some amazing coincidence, because we know they're happening, right? They must be happening. It's real, I want to tell the story quickly of when my own son, I have two sons now, but I only have one that was born male. And when he was born in Guam in 2002, which is, as you know, a U.S. territory, I was trying to be chill. I'd already been to the United Nations. I'd already presented the issue to the UN, but I was trying not to be Mr. Activist. I was trying to be Mr. Dad, proud dad, and I was a proud dad. In Geneva, I had the first ultrasound of Eli on my bedside table. I mean, I really was trying to be a good dad. And the nurse came to me 5 different days. Oh, do you want to circumcise your son? No. 2 days later, hi, Mr. Svoboda. Are we circumcising your son? No, thank you. And 5 times. And finally, I said to her, you do know there's no medical reason for this, right? And she chirpily responded, oh, yes. So I said, well, then why are you asking? Oh, because some parents want it. Oh, and if I wanted my son's left arm cut off, you would do that, but you didn't offer me that. His right arm, his leg. Why only that one choice off the potential menu of things we could amputate? Oh, parents want it. What do I say to that? What do we say to that as a culture, as a society?
I don't know. That's why we're here. There is no such thing as extra skin born on a child. I mean, again, I guess this little part of my earlobe right here, maybe that's some kind of extra skin. I don't know what that's for.
Extra skin,
but,
yeah.
But we don't go cutting that off either. Totally accurate how you presented that. Was like, this is the only body part that is like, oh, we have an option of amputating this. Even the word amputation, people want to argue semantics. Oh, it's not an amputation. Okay, we're excising it. Well, we're cutting something off. Yeah, but it's the foreskin. It never makes any sense, Stephen.
It makes no sense. And yet, when you're fish, I imagine if some really smart fish or really deranged fish comes up to you and says, hey, guess what, Stephen Fish? There's this thing around us everywhere. It's called water. And if we're not in water, we're going to die. We're not going to be able to breathe. And I'm going to look around. I'm going to say, I don't see any water. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
we're swimming in it. We don't get it. We believe the stories we're told. We believe the lies we're told, because just as I'm sure, and I'm not analogizing, I'm not saying they're the same thing, but just as an analogy, as I imagine, Dwayne, before slavery stopped, which I think we can agree was not a good thing, I imagine that people felt like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because these poor people were taking care of them. They're obviously not as smart. They obviously should be slaves because they're stupider than we are. They probably thought they were doing a good thing. I imagine it's the same for some people with this. It's a very different topic. I'm not equating them at all. I'm just analogizing the mental move where something becomes customary in your life, and it seems to make sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, the social reform, women's suffrage, and slavery, as you mentioned.
Another example. Why do women need to vote? They just do what their husband tells them.
Yeah.
What's the purpose? There's no point.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not married? Are you going to let non-married women vote? Really? I mean, I'm sure that was a thought somebody had at some point. I'm sure.
It just gets weirder the deeper you go down the rabbit hole.
It really does. It really does. It really does. Yeah. Norm Cohen, who's still an activist, Norm Cohen and Tim Hammond's award-winning film in the late 80s, Whose Body, Whose Rights, about male genital mutilation, which was on public TV. Norm Cohen said, now this was 1989, so the moon landing wasn't that many decades previously, we've been to the moon, we've done all these amazing things, and we're still doing this. Well, guess what? It's 2026, and we're still doing it. Yeah. Even more stunning, we have artificial intelligence.
It's the 21st. That's what gets me the most about this, is we're still cutting the genitals of infants in 2026. Because supposedly there's benefits about it. It's cleaner. Well, we have invented soap and showers in the last 2,000 years, believe it or not.
In fact, we had soap in the 80s, believe it or not.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's true. Soap in the 80s as well. Yeah, I do remember that soap in the 80s. And I had a shower too.
We did. I showered when I was a kid. Yeah.
None of it makes, once people realize it, it's one of those things where once you realize it, you can't believe that you didn't see it before. And
Exactly.
I've had this experience with other things. Yeah.
Chinese foot binding. I mean, that's another example of something that was totally accepted back in the day.
Absolutely. And it's like something I share. It's a meme I share, and it shows them. So what is it? Thailand, where they stretch the necks of the girls, and then in Africa, where they do scarification of the children.
Yeah, all those things.
Foot binding in China, and so whenever someone talks to me about parents' choice, I send them that meme. Okay, the parents' choice, right? It's okay. No, it's not okay. Your decision stops at another person's skin.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's usually the principle we apply in most cases. And then we cut out a few exceptions which make no logical sense, but they seem to make sense to us. It sort of makes sense overall to people. Like, basically, as you said, Dwayne, the boundary of permissible action is the other person's body, except like something really innocuous, really no harm at all, really innocuous, and with health benefits and aesthetic benefits like circumcision. It sounds very innocuous. Maybe we'll make an exception for that. But it's not innocuous. It does cause harm. It doesn't have benefits, and there's no reason it should be accepted. And the presentation that I just made in Los Angeles a few weeks ago with you present, Dwayne, and you gave your own excellent presentation too. I talked about how these people want to make these exceptions, and they sound so plausible to people, and they really think that they're just justified. We have cultural blindness just like everybody else. We think we don't. We absolutely do. And the Africans, in some countries, in some cultures, MGM, male genital mutilation, and FGM, female genital mutilation, are both practiced. And there are also cultures where neither are practiced. And the African scholars down there, raised in Africa, culturally African, some of them in the US, some of them still in Africa, several have written about this topic, and they think we're so arrogant to think that we can say that, well, the male version of this is acceptable and the female version is completely unacceptable. And of course, at Attorneys for the Rights of the Child, we wholeheartedly agree that female genital mutilation is completely unacceptable. And I know you do too, Dwayne. And I think everyone in Los Angeles agrees with that at the conference. The thing we're working for, of course, is to include male children in that same protection that female children receive. And to a greater extent than used to be, the intersex children are also receiving it these days. So that's our work. That's our frontier that we're working toward.
Absolutely. We all believe that all children deserve the right to their own body. They shouldn't have parts of their body amputated without their consent, unless there's a very ultra rare medical need for, cutting into the genitals of a child, which is what, 1 in a million, who knows? It's super rare.
I've never really heard of an actual case. I hear this limitation built in, but I'd like to know if it's ever actually happened.
Well, one of our other guests was talking about that it is possible for some of the intersex children, when they're born, is like their urethra might not even be connected properly. So there are cases where there might be an actual medical need, but it's
for the intersex children, what used to be called hermaphrodites, the intersex children.
Right.
A few of them, not many.
No, it's a very, 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 very small percentage. Another question is, what does intactivism need the most right now?
Let me start in a slightly different point, and I'll try to get to that question. Right now, I would say, so we just came back, you and I, Dwayne, and a number of others, at least 110 people attended, just came back from this conference in Los Angeles a few weeks ago. And there was a mood of optimism. There was a mood of excitement. This relatively new organization, Intact Global, is bringing a lawsuit in Oregon to obtain the right for males to be protected by the same Oregon constitutional protections that females enjoy. So that's exciting. There's a potential breakthrough there. And we've been working with my organization. We've been publishing groundbreaking papers. For example, there's a judge that I talked about at the conference that had a case involving male genital mutilation, more commonly known as circumcision. Another case, 16 years later involving, presented in Los Angeles. There was this judge, the same judge that decided a case involving male genital mutilation, circumcision, and 16 years later, the only case actually ever decided involving female genital mutilation under the original law, which has now been replaced by a stronger law, because this judge told the Congress how to fix the former FGM law. So he took action to protect against FGM, which is great, to protect girls, and refused and actually laughed at our case, our class action, to protect males from having circumcisions done without even consent of the parents, let alone consent of the actual individuals themselves. So very different treatment. But this judge is reflecting society, Dwayne. You know that, and I know that. He's reflecting society's view that they're two completely different things. And that's what we are all saying will not fly anymore. They're treating male babies completely differently from female babies. There's a great cartoon where they look in their diapers and they say, well, I don't see any great difference. And that's sort of the level we're at, is this sort of kindergarten or sub-kindergarten level in this stuff, that we would actually think that one side would deserve protection and the other side wouldn't.
Agreed. All children deserve intact genitals. So going back to, what does intactivism need the most right now?
Oh, what does intactivism need the most right now? Well, we have these lawsuits happening, and we have our different voices presenting different perspectives on it. And we've been doing our best at Attorneys for the Rights of the Child to keep moods positive. We're going to be putting out a newsletter this month about the conference, which I was very excited about, in Los Angeles, and I want to spread the word. One thing very exciting, which is new, is that there's a group that I've been working with, the Attorneys for the Rights of the Child has been working with, which has succeeded in getting legislation introduced in federal government and in 8 states to protect men's health. Of course, many organizations exist to protect women's health, but getting men's health protected has not been as easy. And this is something we're starting to get recognition of. Finally, one aspect of it, of course, is the issue we're talking about. There's also other aspects, but male genital mutilation, as you know, Dwayne, can cause suicide. There's documented cases of activists and non-activists. I know some names. There was the John Jones case in Canada, where this kid was circumcised and lost his penis and was raised as a girl and was unhappy and ended up killing himself. And he had an identical twin who was unharmed, who also was so upset that he also committed suicide. There's just been a lot of tragedy and devastation that has come from this supposedly innocuous procedure. We're one organization, Dwayne, and we're doing our part. And what we do is write scholarly papers, publish a newsletter, and give public presentations and podcasts like the one right now, and spread the word with the public as much as possible. There's lawsuits going on from Intact Global. There's other organizations. There's Doctors Opposing Circumcision, which is working with the physicians. There's just so many different avenues, and each of us has a little different lens on what work we're trying to do. And I do believe we're making progress. I don't hear the same things I used to hear even 10 years ago. More young people are skeptical, and they don't just trust whatever they're told, no less so than ever. And my kids are 21 and 24 now. Young people around the US, around the world, are investigating things on their own, looking things up on the internet, discovering the many organizations that are not happy with this practice. There's Bloodstained Men, which I know you've been part of, Dwayne. I've been part of as well. Civil disobedience. This is not something that's going to be accepted. This is not something that's just going to skirt under the radar like it has. No more under the radar for us.
No, and the foreskin is out of the closet, and the information is available now. And I believe that's why we're seeing that the next generation is not so inclined to just go cutting body parts off, because the information is out there. And that also means that the information is out there for these young men to know what happened to them. And for me, my self-realization when I realized of my own circumcision was really was relief, because I realized why I've acted the way I've acted my entire life. And that leads right into my next question: the psychological and emotional, and we can talk about physical harms of circumcision as well.
They're real, of course. We have both intact, that is, not physically harmed men in our movement, and of course a lot of women as well who are our sisters working with us, men who were cut as well in our work. And
I've heard a lot of stories. I've known men who felt they couldn't continue given the harm that they suffered and that ended their lives. And I know other men that are seriously damaged and are still with us, but and a couple of sadly, a couple of activists who sort of, in my opinion, they've lost contact with consensual reality in recent years. And for me, that's always sad. And I honestly, it's pretty likely. I'm not an expert in any of this, but to me, it seems likely as a layperson that it probably was related in some way to this terrible thing that they had happened to them when they were children. We'll never know. I mean, some of us, I'm not personally aggrieved by what happened to me or didn't happen to me. I got involved in this from the beginning because I felt empathy with those who did feel great harm. I've been a crusader my whole life, although I know that word is not favored anymore. But I've been a fighter for justice my whole life in many different ways. And this seemed like there was no legal organization involved in this work until recently, other than attorneys for the rights of the child. And this felt like a valiant fight, a fight worth fighting. And justice anywhere, it needs to be assured in order to create justice everywhere. And when we have a corner of the world where we think it's okay to mistreat certain kinds of humans, and we have excuses and we have ways of convincing ourselves, and oh, he needs to look like his father, or oh, whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter. No, he doesn't. He needs to have his body protected, the body that he was intended to have. That's what is needed. And all your reasons to justify it, sorry, they don't fly.
They all fall quickly under the weight of logic.
They do, but some people can be really committed to them, and we need compassion. It doesn't help to be too peremptory or too triggered.
Hmm.
And we hear all sorts of things. I mean, we hear from people who come from faith communities. Maybe they're not even religious, but maybe they come from a community that where there's a practice. You know, we know the Jewish communities, the Islamic communities. Maybe you come from. A lot of people think it's required by Christianity. Remarkably enough.
I find that most interesting as well, that even my own father, when I first confronted him about it, was his first reaction was, "I'd do it again." And it was because of supposed Christian religious beliefs. And then he actually went, his words to me were, "I would do it again." And then he actually went to his priest, and his priest was like, "No, it's not required." And as a matter of fact, the Christian religion is very much against circumcision. So that's a whole religious aspect that I'll try to avoid the religious aspect for me, because it doesn't matter what your religion is, it's the harm to a child. It's harm to the child.
That's right. And we have a lot of the two groups that have been overrepresented historically in this movement, as you know, Dwayne, have been gay men who are comfortable talking about their bodies in ways that straight men often aren't. And the other group has been Jewish people. And of course, a lot of the Jewish people aren't actually practicing Jews anymore. In some cases, they left the religion because they felt so aggrieved by the genital mutilation. In other cases, they had other reasons. But regardless, we have a lot of Jewish people who call themselves Jewish and who are actually Jewish. And they say to us, well, gee, Stephen, it's anti-Semitic if you're not supporting kids that are, however you want to language it, Jewish. It's anti-Semitic to say their bodies aren't worth protecting, but the non-Jewish, non-Islamic kids are worth protecting, because no baby can declare their own religion. And in fact, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that each person has the right to define their own religion, that one can't be forced to follow a religion by anyone. So when a baby's 1 day old, we have no way to know what religion it is. And this physical marking on their body, I'm not Jewish, but the physical marking on the body, you're not playing fair with the kid. You're not letting them make their own decision.
The way I put it is that all children deserve the religious freedom, even those that weigh less than 10 pounds.
Exactly.
Yeah. What's the height requirement for a person to be allowed to have a religious freedom? There isn't one. Every person deserves the right to their own religious freedom, but yet somehow we're taking this religious freedom away from infants because they can't say no. Actually, they are saying they're using the only voice they have, which is their
Exactly. Well, one thing that occurs to me, I probably thought it before. I don't remember ever thinking it before, but the brain. Okay, so the brain was my refuge when I was a child. I had a sort of a bad childhood. I was more or less raised by wolves, not literally, but metaphorically.
Oh, me too.
And yeah, I didn't have a good childhood. And my refuge was my brain. And that the only thing that I believed that was good about me until I was at least 30 was that I was smart. And I noticed, Dwayne, that a lot of us in this movement use our brains as refuge, and also people who are supporting various forms of genital mutilation use their brains a lot too. And our brains can come up with really crazy, advanced, complicated reasons in both directions for things. And this is why we survived the saber-toothed tigers back in the day. We weren't faster, our teeth weren't sharper, but we were smarter in the relevant ways anyway. And that's why we're alive now, Dwayne. That's why you and I are here. That's why we have these laptops we're talking over. So our brains are so great, and I use great partly in quotation marks, and thinking of all these reasons why genital mutilation is okay, why it's actually good. Look like the father, hygiene, HIV. All these things are not true, but that's what people say. But also, like if we've been caught, some of us have to figure out how we're going to get through life. And so the brain comes up with ways to do that. And thank goodness it does, so that we're able to live our lives and not have them sadly made impossible by the fact we had this bad thing happen to us as kids. So thank goodness for the brains, but the brains are not limit don't have limitless power. And if we're cut, we're cut. And no matter how smart we are, okay, we can restore our foreskin for those who do that. It doesn't bring the original penis back like it would have been without the operation, sadly.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, I mean, I just started, but I don't know. My brain is not handling my circumcision well lately. So it's
it's tough. It's tough. Make no bones about it. It is tough. It is tough, and I know my brothers struggle with this, and it can be such a struggle. And we have our sisters, and not as common, but we have our sisters who also suffered some forms of genital mutilation, and they're suffering terribly as well. And some of them have written books about it, so they've gone public. Patricia Robinette, but yeah, there's a lot of stories, and they're sad stories, and they're tragic stories, Dwayne. And I feel a lot of empathy for my brothers and my sisters who are struggling with these issues.
Female genital mutilation cultures use the same excuses. It's cleaner,
Yeah.
it's more attractive, there's less disease. Same. It's actually the exact same excuses we use here in America to cut little boys.
Absolutely. Well, Lightfoot Klein, among other authors, wrote about that precise thing in the late 80s in her book Prisoners of Ritual. And yeah, it's been written about over and over. And yeah, it's true. I mean, the same reasons are used. People don't seem to realize it. But yeah, cleaner, avoids diseases. Well, if I cut off my arm, I'm never going to have like arm cancer, right? Right? Is arm cancer a thing? I don't know, but I know I'm not going to have it in this arm if I cut it off.
Exactly.
I
If I
mean,
cut my finger off, I'm not going to get dirt under my fingernail. Yes.
right.
Yeah. No one can argue. Yeah. Well, I can't argue with that. Prophylactic amputations of any other body part on any human being other than supposed problem of the foreskin, which doesn't seem to be a problem for 5,000 species of mammals on Earth, only for the American male.
Only for the American male. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
like
true. It's true.
none of this passes the logic test.
No, it doesn't. And it's one of those topics that we can talk about it for hours, Dwayne. You and I, I'm sure, could talk about it for many hours, and I've talked about it for many hours with many different people. And then at the same time, you sort of stop yourself and say, okay, why is this even a 2-minute conversation? Isn't this
Yeah.
like the simplest topic imaginable? And it sort of is, actually. I mean, I've been to every. I've lived in or near Berkeley. I went to UC Berkeley physics a long time ago, and I've lived in Berkeley or near it for most of my 40 years since then. I've been to every specialty library at Berkeley, except for I think two. I mean, public health as it related to the work to protect against genital mutilation, medical, of course, law, of course. I mean, every topic, except I think architecture, I think hasn't come up, and I think there's one other one. Issue just seems to embrace pretty much all disciplines in one way or other over the years. And yet it's simple. People seem to have an endless ability to complicate it. Oh, what about HIV? We have to stop. We have to protect the Africans. Here we are, these great people from Harvard and Johns Hopkins. We're going to go down and be the white saviors, saving the oversexed African men from their own sexuality. That campaign has been shown to be complete nonsense, and yet it's been going on for 19 years, and it's made Harvard and Johns Hopkins many millions, probably billions of dollars. It's just a big scam, if you want to know the truth.
I don't understand how it's making them money, but when an organization goes to Africa and offers free amputations, there must be a reason.
The money paths, the thing about money is that like places like Johns Hopkins are so different about money than poor Africans are. I mean, so in some cases, and I just wrote a paper about this program in Africa, so this is why I'm fresh with the thinking about it. In some cases, they're paying the Africans. They're not necessarily in money, but they're giving them things that are very valuable to them. I've football jerseys, football means soccer everywhere, but in the US, football jerseys or footballs or other things that they would never be able to afford to buy, that or medical supplies. That is the same as paying them if you're displacing a month of income for them and something you're giving them. And then this claim from these first world, highly prestigious universities is, oh, we're not compensating the subjects. We're going in, we're being very objective, we're being very fair, very intellectual, and the whole thing's a smokescreen. And why are Harvard and Johns Hopkins involved in this? Come on. I mean, and all these prestigious researchers are writing papers about it. There's hundreds and hundreds of peer-reviewed papers about this stuff. I read them all because I have to, because I published 45 papers myself about genital mutilation. I mean, it's insanity. It's literal insanity. It's
what was the last paper you published about circumcision?
Well, it was the one that I talked about in Los Angeles. It was in the Cardozo Journal of Human Rights and Equal Protection, and it was about this Judge Friedman who decided these two cases 16 years apart, where for female genital mutilation, he told how to fix the problems in the law to make it sound under the US Constitution, which did. And in the case of the male circumcision class action we presented on behalf of Latina mothers in New York City, the judge sat here laughing at our presentation, at our closing argument, smiling and nodding at the other side's closing argument, which of course they're not allowed to do. Judges aren't allowed to do that. Come on, you're telegraphing to the jury what the right decision is. But unfortunately, we had some shortcomings with our hired state counsel, who was actually turned out, unfortunately, an alcoholic. So he didn't do what he should have been doing in the case. And so we weren't able to appeal. And this is how these things go. And this judge comes in and fails on the requirements of discharging his office properly. But he swims in the same water we all do. He feels like, oh, what are these people even suing over? Circumcision? It's like, it's Latino kids. The Latinos don't circumcise. That's not in their culture. I mean, the whole thing just boggles the mind. They were presenting these forms to the Latina mothers in English, which a lot of them didn't speak. I speak fluent Spanish, which was one of the things I was involved in the case, was talking to the Spanish-speaking press every day, presenting these forms to them, consent forms. Consent is a misnomer, but presenting them with page 2 at the top, there was a line. They said in English or in Spanish, sign here so you can go home with your baby. Page 1 had the whole consent thing, saying what the procedure was. The mothers didn't read that page because the nurse didn't present that to them. It was just a setup. It was just a classic setup. Judge couldn't be bothered. Oh,
no judge wants a controversial case.
He's sitting there telling the jury which way to decide the case. You're not supposed to do that. That's a mistrial.
Cultural bias. His personal cultural bias.
His personal cultural bias. Yep.
Allowing children to be mutilated in the United States as we speak. And,
yep.
and I wanted to address, my opinion, what the activism needs most right now, and that's the elephant in the middle of the room, and that's money. None of this happens without money. The Bloodstained Men doesn't hit the streets without money. ARC-Law is not able to do research or trials especially in other states without money. Intact Global can't do it without money. So it's hard to say. It pains me to say about this point. We need money. But if you can contribute, pick whatever organization you want, whether you want to do Attorneys for the Rights of the Child or Intact Global or Bloodstained Men, or I think these are the big players. And then Intaction, of course, with Tony Lo Sguarda. And remind me the name of his lobbying arm. Do you know off the top of your head?
I know what you mean. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. It's 2 words, but if you look at Intaction, you'll see it.
You'll see it there. These are the big players in the Intactivist movement right now. And I think the most important actually right now is lawyers, because we had to make a law that said murder was illegal.
Right,
We're going to have to
right.
make a law saying circumcision is illegal. We have to protect children from their own parents.
Well, I think properly interpreted, existing laws are adequate protection. And unfortunately, there's been legislation. I don't know if you know about this, Dwayne, but there's been state laws passed in a bunch of states. Illinois is one of them that say that child abuse laws, for example, shall not include circumcision. There's a specific law that says that in like 6 states because, well, gee, why would you pass a law like that? Well, you must be afraid that otherwise genital mutilation of males might be considered child abuse. So, again, this is another thing that boggles the mind. Like, why would anyone pass a law like this unless they felt like it did qualify under the law? So,
what is your opinion on an angle for a lawsuit about that? Those particular laws where we're not allowed to abuse a child except circumcision. Is there an
well, I
angle?
don't even know. I don't even know if I'm not even sure if there's ever been a case in Illinois where that statute has been invoked to protect the genital cutting. I mean, generally, it just sort of gets protected by cultural inertia. And judges, of course, are people always have this misconception that activist judges move the law forward. Well, usually not. The reason for the misconception is the one historical case where that did happen, where with civil rights for African Americans, in fact, some activist lawyers and activist judges did, in fact, move ahead of the social movement. But almost always, I think always other than that, the social movements come first, often decades earlier, and then the courts get dragged along afterwards. And that's, I think, what you and I are trying to do, Dwayne, and Intact Global and Attorneys for the Rights of the Child, all of us. We're trying to get the social movement far enough along that we're going to, when some court cases get brought, like the case in Oregon, that there will be some inertia from that because it's a different world. It's a different world, and people are thinking things through now on their own. And I think that Oregon case is actually promising. It's not one of those cases that you bring and you sort of know it's not going to have success. I mean, so that's another reason why people are starting to get guardedly optimistic is things are changing. It's a different world now. We've got more resources. We've got more online presence. There's so many things you can get at a click of a mouse. Whereas
Are you directly involved with the lawsuit in Oregon?
I'm not directly involved. No, I'm only involved in that. I went to the conference and I knew about the case. I'd read the brief and I know that it's moving ahead. I haven't been directly involved. No, we have other things going on. And that's the great thing about the movement is there's Bloodstained Men, as you said, and there's several different organizations that are doing different things, and we're all working together, but in different ways. And I think that's gonna get us toward our goal faster than if we were all doing the same thing, shouting loudly and saying the same thing.
It's going to
I mean,
take
we are
all of
saying the
us.
same thing, but we're saying it in different ways.
It's going to
So,
take all of us. Yeah, as Eric Klopper said, there is no silver bullet, but there is silver buckshot.
oh, I missed it when he said that. That's a really good line. Did you say that at the
Yeah,
conference?
he did. Yeah,
Oh,
he
I
did.
missed that. Oh, that's a really good line. Oh, that's good. I like that.
That's what that's what the intactivism movement is. We're the silver buckshot.
Oh, I really like that. That is really true. That is really true. Yeah, we'd like to think we're a silver bullet, but we're silver buckshot. But buckshot can kill you too, and buckshot is going to kill you, Mister Male Genital Mutilation. Watch out, we're coming.
Yes. Yeah, we are. Yes. The word is out. The denial is, and that's what it is. The circumcision lives in denial. It cannot continue when faced with an overwhelming evidence of the harms psychologically, emotionally, and physically. We're leaving a scar on a child. How can that not be harm?
Right, you're leaving a scar. Right, and when I was a kid, I didn't know what that scar was. It's like, what is that? Where'd that come from? We a lot of us don't know. A lot of kids think they're intact and they're not, and they don't learn it till 20, 25, 30 in some cases, and then they find out, oh, the statute of limitations passed. I can't sue. Well, that's no fair, right?
No, I never knew. How would I know? I never saw an intact penis. And it was like,
I
I
didn't know.
always wondered though. And it was like, why does the skin tone change halfway down the shaft of my penis? And I was like, I never
Right,
understood that until I
right,
realized that I was circumcised. I'm like, oh, well, now I
right.
understand.
It
Yeah,
makes
that's
no
the scar
sense.
line. That's where the scar line is.
Guess what, Dwayne? I don't want to shock you, but guess what? Genital mutilation makes no sense. Who knew?
Yeah. It's horrible on all levels. If it's bad for a girl, it's bad for a boy. And to say that it's different, okay, physically it's different, but it's not. It's not to the child. It's the same.
Not really different. I mean, everything's different, right?
Where do we go from here? What's the future of intactivism, Stephen Svoboda?
What's the future of intactivism? I think the future of intactivism is we are ground swelling, if that's a verb. Things are coming together. There's more of us. We're madder than we were in the past. We've got more resources. We have a little more money. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. And most of all, we have a lot of determination. And I tell you, Dwayne, I've saved some children through my work, some specific children that I know about, and I've met the parents. And let me tell you, it feels really good. And maybe you've had the same experience.
I have not yet, not yet.
So, regardless, I'm sure that your work has saved children, and both our work is going to continue to save more. It's a good fight. And so we're going to continue the good fight.
Well, that's what makes it worth. That's what makes it worth it for me. And it's like, because I spend hours of my life every day, promoting the genital integrity of children.
Right.
And for me, and it's like, if I can save one, that's all I need. And I've heard through the friends of a friend, I've heard through my friends that I've saved children from what I've been doing. I've never directly met these people or that child, but when I go on a tour with the Bloodstained Men and give a week of my life and take a week of my vacation time or more, 10 days of my vacation time, and give it to Bloodstained Men and protect children with educational street outreach using theatrical influences to garner awareness, that it's worth it to me. Save one.
All right. Rather than go off to Tahiti or whatever, you wear a white suit with a red stain at the crotch symbolizing blood, and wear that. And we have some women in Bloodstained Men who wear the bloodstained suit as well, which I think is a really cool thing. And it's a graphic way of conveying the message.
There are some very, very powerful, committed women to this Intactivist movement.
Some of them were at the conference. Yeah, some of them were at the conference in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Very amazing that, like, again, there's women out there that spend hours of their day dedicating their lives to saving the genitals of children. And to have that is I think very, very, very powerful, because they weren't cut.
They weren't.
And they're currently protected, although, that law didn't come about until 1996.
Well, so actually, the 1996 law is the one that Judge Friedman found the flaw in and told how to fix up the flaws in it. So now we have a new law that's replaced that law that was passed in 2021, the Stop FGM Act of 2021. That was the first act of ARC, actually, was to go to the press conference for that law that Patricia Schroeder got passed in, I think, 95, but then it actually took effect in 96, I think. Yeah, a while ago.
How does the new law, what did they change in the new law that...
Okay, well, here's the thing. This is getting down as sort of a detailed constitutional law, but in constitutional law, things that aren't the federal province are reserved to the states, because we have this odd thing in the US where we have 50 states and the federal government and 51 legal systems, and we hear about states' rights all the time. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's a few provinces like immigration law, patent law, which is what I do, writing patents on inventions. That's my paying job. And the matters that aren't delegated to the federal government, generally speaking, at least the ones that are seen as local and inherently more appropriate for state regulation, are reserved to the states. And criminal law typically has been reserved to the states. So for the federal government to come in and pass a federal law against female genital mutilation, well, there has to be a constitutional basis for that. And so the law has to be written in a certain way. There's a few different approved reasons why you can pass a federal law for something that's usually a state matter. And one of them is if it's involved in interstate commerce. So Judge Friedman told Congress how to write a law that would have a sound basis in interstate commerce. And there was another basis as well beyond the interstate commerce basis for making this law really well founded so that it would stand up to scrutiny. So that's what Congress did. They basically thank you very much, Judge Friedman. They basically.
So interstate commerce, how is this an interstate commerce issue? Other than selling the foreskin, how is this a commerce?
I was trying not to go down a constitutional rabbit hole, but that's so the Commerce Clause is notorious, I think, what you could say, for being used and probably overused as an excuse for every time the federal government wants to pass a law that's reserved to the states. I'm forgetting now, there's a second reason in the second basis in the new law that wasn't in the old law, that's not the Commerce Clause as to why the federal government has authority for passing it. I just have to take a brief look at the law. I'm not remembering off the top of my head. If you wanted to include this, we could do a second supplementary
That's
podcast.
fine. I was just
But
curious.
to answer your question, though, the Commerce Clause is basically the default go-to excuse that's always used whenever the federal government wants to pass any law that's a criminal matter or whatever it is that's normally reserved to the states. And so the Congress was really careful to really carefully explain all the different ways that when FGM happens, it affects interstate commerce. That sometimes, I don't remember them all, but they were listed in the law, like cutters from one state can travel across state lines to another state to do the cutting. And when families get the cutting done, it affects business in all these different ways. And they have to travel and they have to pay for lodging. And it spelled it all out in great detail why it affects interstate commerce. So
Okay.
law is a funny thing. Like when you're around it for a long time, like I've been, because I graduated from law school in 1991. So that's shockingly 35 years ago. My goodness, I feel old. You get used to this stuff like interstate commerce, but a newcomer to this wonderful world of law, as I sarcastically call it, like you, Dwayne, that sounds crazy. Interstate commerce is not a reason at all. And it isn't. It isn't a reason. But nevertheless, it's what's been used.
Just like there's no reason to cut a child.
Exactly. Very good analogy. Very good analogy. You should be a lawyer. No, don't be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I always tell people, don't go to law school unless you have a specific reason. Otherwise, don't do it. They're going to teach you to be a lawyer, how to think like a lawyer, which is basically how to think like a bad person.
Uh-huh.
Unless you're very strong-willed like I am, and you're already 28 when you start law school, and you live off campus all 3 years, and I avoided this whole thing that Harvard does to you, lived off campus and retained my sanity. Thank you very much. Retained my opinionated self. Thank you very much. So yeah, but it's a serious thing being taught to think like a lawyer. Not a good thing. Not anything that should be legal. Let's put it that way.
So what else would you like to add to our talk today, Stephen?
Here's my bottom line. This stuff is not rocket science. And as I was saying earlier, a lot of our brains are very smart and they're doing rocket science either to explain why their favorite brand of genital mutilation is okay or why genital mutilation of any kind is not okay. And our brains are great tools. Our brains are wonderful. I use mine every day. I'm really grateful for it. I need it for my job, patent lawyer. I need it for work with attorneys for the rights of the child. Our brains don't do it all. Like let's even not even need to resort to our brains. Just like cutting a child. Does that sound like a good thing or a bad thing? Hurting a child when there's no medical basis for it. Well, let's think about it. Child's crying. That's not good, right? Sounds like the child doesn't like it. But what other reason is there? Are we keeping them from getting cancer? Are we keeping them from dying in the next 7 days? No. Why are we doing it? Oh, we have some crazy idea about looking like your dad or about HIV in Africa. Really? Isn't Africa? Come on, this whole Africa thing is ridiculous. AIDS thing is ridiculous. Or cleanliness. Well, gee, I don't know. The men in Sweden aren't dropping dead like we were talking about earlier. Somehow, miraculously. So what other reasons are there? Penile cancer. Well, usually only happens to really old, really men who really don't keep themselves clean at all, and almost never happens statistically. And in fact, the American Cancer Society debunked penile cancer, said it's not a reason to do this thing. We're out of reasons. Why are we even looking for reasons? Let's start with the basics. It's a baby. What do babies want? They want to be fed. They want to play. They want to learn about the world. Their brain needs to grow. They need to be held. They need to be loved. They need to sleep 14, 16 hours a day initially. Why don't we do those things? Why don't we not do anything else? Nothing else needs doing. They don't need to be fixed. They don't need to be changed. If we're parents and we have a baby that's neither clearly a male nor female and intersex, we can be a little uncomfortable with that. If our aunt asks us, is it a boy or a girl? We can just say, we don't know yet, mom, dad, aunt, sorry. It's like people are overthinking this stuff, Dwayne. It's not that hard. The babies are crying. How about we listen to the babies?
Yes, the babies are using the only voice they have. Yes.
They're using the only voice they have. And my goodness, it's really not that. It's really not that complicated.
All people's voices matter, even those that do not have words yet.
Absolutely.
Well, Stephen, I want to be respectful of your time and our viewers' time, and I thank you so much. And keep doing what you're doing for attorneys of the rights of the child. We can't do it without you. we need all of us, and Attorneys for the Rights of the Child has been doing some amazing work over the last 30 years. And it just doesn't seem possible that we're in the 21st century and still cutting the healthy genitals of children.
It really doesn't. Thank you so much, Dwayne. We're getting there. We're making progress, and bless you for your work, brother. And yes, we're moving forward. We really are.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.